All right, number 2, public safety presentation. Mr. Fuller. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Harris, members of the council. Chief Williams and I are here to do a PowerPoint presentation for you about an overview of the fire department. But before we get started, I want to introduce Zachary Hamill. And Zachary is the new emergency services manager for Sutter County. Zach came from Sonoma County Office of Emergency Services. Our office, the fire department, will be working closely with Zach and Brenna Howell, who's still on as a consultant, in the creation of a county-wide emergency plan, development of flood maps, joint emergency training opportunities that we've been working on, and the implementation of Code Red notification system. So I'd like to introduce Zach to you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Like Chief Fuller said, my name is Zach Hamill, and I come from Sonoma County. While I'm new to Sutter County, I'm not new to the area because I grew up in Colusa County. And once a month, we came to the big city of Yuba City to go grocery shopping. So familiar with the area. And much like Sutter County is similar to Sonoma County, we had a lot of flood issues there as well. So I'm very experienced with floods. The other thing that from Sonoma County that I'm bringing with me that I'm excited to bring to Sutter County and to Yuba City is I created the alert and warning program for Sonoma County. I ran the most unique and the largest alert and warning exercise on the West Coast last year, where it provided a feedback for the public to give us information on how well the message was received and how we can better draft these systems to implement them. So thank you for allowing me to speak tonight, and I look forward to working with all of you and the city staff.
Thank you. We have a PowerPoint presentation for you to provide a current update as to what's going on in the Yuba City Fire Department. So I'd like to, right here, thank you so much. I'd like to begin at the beginning. Oops. Little history lesson on Yuba City. In 1907, there was a fire that burned down the commercial center, basically 2nd and Bridge Street, and it started a move for the citizens of this area to incorporate as a city. In 1908, they incorporated as a city, and one of the first things they did in 1909 was to form a fire department. Picture there was the fire station, which was under the water tower on Plymouth Street. Our service area, we serve an area of approximately 30 square miles and includes a residential population of about 76,000. Now, our service area extends beyond the city's boundaries. We have work with a contract that the city has with the County of Sutter to provide services into what's called Community Service Area G, which was kind of covered the old Walton Fire Protection District. We have 5 fire stations that are strategically located within the urban area. And location-wise, you can see on the map here, Station 1 kind of in the central part of the city. Station 2, thank you so much. Station 1 in the central part of the city, which is our busiest station. Station 2, which second busiest in the evening, especially. Station 3 to the south. Station 4, which is actually in the county, but it was put there during the time of Chief Boomgarden to serve this larger area as development filled out into the urban area. And Station 7 out on Butte House Road. Station 4 and 7, old Station 4 on Walton Avenue, and Station 7 were the part of the Walton Fire Protection District. Too much. Let me go back here. Our interim organization chart. Obviously, we're in the process of going out to get a new fire chief. Currently, we have Chief Landon, the police chief, is serving as the public safety chief, both police and fire. Chief Williams is the assistant fire chief on charge of operations. I've been assigned to be the assistant fire chief in charge of administration. We have 3 battalion chiefs in charge of their shifts, shift A, shift B, and we have a fire marshal, considered our first level managers. Each station has a captain on each shift, engineer and firefighters, and we'll get into some of the staffing areas. We also have an administrative analyst and an administrative clerk and a fire safety inspector. Turn over to Chief Williams.
So as far as the fire operations, when it comes to that side of the fire department, to put it in more simple terms, the operations side is everything that we see the folks of the Yuba City Fire Department performing on a day-to-day basis. With that said, as Bill Fuller had mentioned, the breakdown of our personnel at our stations. On a day-to-day basis, we have up to 16 firefighters that are on duty. For the Station 1, you might notice that there is an overstaffed position that is encompassed with the Safer Grant firefighter that we have. But for the rest of our stations, we have a fire captain, engineer, and firefighter. And we'll discuss a little more later in this slide of how our Safer firefighters are used, how that overstaffed position is used as well. As far as the growth of the fire department and how busy it has become in the last few years, as you can see the breakdown here, we are on pace once again for this upcoming year to be at or slightly above that call volume. And as you can see, we have increased regularly over the course of the past few years. This breaks down the service call comparisons with other fire departments. You'll note in the highlighted area there, Yuba City, we serve a population of roughly 76,000 people. But if you look at our call volume compared to some of the other cities that are mentioned there, our call volume is quite high in comparison. And as we look at what the cost of our calls or the incidents that we run roughly break down to, if you take our annual budget, divide it by the number of calls, we get roughly a little over $1,000 per a call. And one thing we might highlight in comparison to some of our other cities, the cost per call is drastically less, and that ultimately reflects in the overall budget that the department has. Cost per capita, as you can see, it breaks down to about $139. But as we go progress on, the operations side encompasses everything that we mentioned as far as our line personnel, the engine companies, and of course the various teams that the Yuba City Fire Department participates in. One of those being the Yuba Center Hazmat Response Team. This has been an apparatus that we have acquired through the state of California, which is contracted. If it is requested by the state, we send it with personnel to mitigate whatever hazardous material situation that might be taking place in our area and region of the state. Also, we work closely with our police department. We have TIMS team members, our tactical EMS, and that is starting to grow a little more broad as we work with other entities in our neighboring county. And as we continue, we have our ATR team, which we call or refer to as the Advanced Technical Rescue Team. And this is a specialized team who is involved in various types of rescues, such as water rescue, confined space type rescues, trench rescues, and everything else that falls under that umbrella, if you will. We talked about our obligation to OES, the Office of Emergency Services. We actually have a number of apparatus with that entity. All of them are under contract again for us to send out if they're requested. Our OES 293, which is pictured here, was taken out of service by the state. It was replaced with OES 407, which we had out on display earlier this evening. And then we have, of course, our hazmat rig, and then our special ATR trailer through OES. One of the big pieces for the Yuba City Fire Department is that we are involved with the community on a regular basis. Sometimes during the busy season, that could be a day-to-day arrangement. As you can see, we go out to visit schools, and if there's an opportunity within the community at certain events, we take that opportunity to have a part in the various events that do occur. Some of the issues that we've been posed with, as we mentioned, we do have the SAFER grant staffing, and that has allowed us to increase our staffing, which has served us well and the community well. But there have been some challenges associated with that as well. On this current SAFER grant, which is a 3-year term, we have 9 firefighters that are on that grant. One of the challenges is keeping 9 firefighters on that grant because of the nature of the SAFER grant employment, which is temporary, limited, and with the pay, it becomes a challenge to keep the personnel that we have invested in and trained. But with that, if things are good, we can have staffing up to 16. As we mentioned, it's been a challenge to keep that level of staffing with the SAFER grant. By the end of August 2021, we will be looking at a possible scenario of decreasing our staffing from 16 down to 13 once the term of the SAFER grant expires. Obviously, the goal is to work towards something that might help us to keep those firefighters. With that said, over the last 3 years, this statistic here, 51% of our staff has been, we've been able to get that staffing all through the SAFER grant. That poses a little bit of a challenge in itself in the fact that our department is becoming increasingly younger, and with attrition and retirements, there's been a necessity for players within the fire department to step into new roles. Because of that, we've had to promote individuals, which has been a good positive thing for our department moving forward. But with that said, we've been having to promote individuals who may not have had as much experience as some of our past members of our department. One example, we've had an FAO promotion of an individual who was promoted after 2 years of being hired as a firefighter. So the goal is to work to fill these key positions. However, with the nature of that SAFER grant, we experience many of our firefighters coming, being trained, because the Yuba City Fire Department does train a good firefighter. But because of that, it makes them more marketable, and as they seek permanent employment, often they tend to go elsewhere as a result. At this point, I think I'll turn it back over to Bill Fuller for Fire Admin.
I wanted just to talk a little bit about fire administration. Fire administration obviously provides the department administrative functions, personnel, discipline, budget. We also provide Fire Prevention Bureau inspections, disaster preparedness, training, emergency management, emergency coordination, and grants. Fire Prevention Bureau is staffed by 2 people, the fire marshal and 1 fire safety inspector. Staffing has not changed in 20 years, though the number of inspections and area of responsibilities have increased over that same time period. Back 10 years from now, or in the past, we were the 4th fastest growing city in California. So you know the growth that's occurred in this area. They're responsible for, obviously, inspections, plan checks on new construction, fire prevention, outreach and education, arson investigation, new construction, mandated inspections by the state, assembly schools, Senate Bill 1205 inspections, which we'll talk about, weed abatement, fireworks booths, and special permits. One of the things I think is important to put out there is that once a building is constructed, it becomes the responsibility of the fire department and the Prevention Bureau to inspect in perpetuity to assure that safety standards are maintained. So it comes out of the building department, it becomes ours forever. Our Prevention Bureau has worked with the local school districts, Yuba City Unified, and the business community to maintain fire prevention and life safety standards. We put a 3-year commitment to work with Yuba City Unified, went through every one of their facilities, brought up what was needed, and then helped their staff to provide the policies and procedures and kind of culture to improve their safety standards at the different schools. This is a kind of an interesting one, and it kind of corresponds to what Ali was talking about with the SAFER grant. As you see, we've had total inspections 2005, they went up in 2010, they went up more in 2015, and they dropped. And you can see kind of here the company inspections in 2015 went from that down to 303. What we're finding is the training requirements to keep our SAFER people brought up to a standard is pulling the time commitments of our full-time people away from company inspections to meet the needs of those staff. At the same time that dropped, our Prevention Bureau picked up considerably more. One of the things down the road, we're doing some benchmarking right now, fire prevention bureaus, to see where we stand in comparison to them, that we may need additional staffing down the road. One of the big things that will be coming back to you this upcoming year, it's dealing with mandatory inspections. As you probably remember, in Oakland there was a fire called the Ghost Ship, a warehouse building where a lot of people were living and having an art colony in. Because the deaths that occurred at that facility, the fact that they were not inspected on a regular basis, the state legislature passed a bill that basically said that, well, you're already required to do these kinds of inspections of apartment houses, lodging houses, motels, hotels, schools. We need you then to come back to the elected body and present what we've done in a year, and that for the elected body to then pass a resolution basically saying you acknowledge receipt of that information. So we'll probably be coming back to you in June or July of next year with a report as to what we've accomplished in terms of these mandated inspections. Emergency management, the fire department has for years been the focal point for cities' emergency preparedness and training. One of the things we do is emergency management coordination with Sutter County on development of a countywide emergency plan, which we'll be working with Zach on. Emergency preparedness, we coordinate the training of ICS training with all our new employees that come through. The elected officials from both city and county have gone through the executive training that's been done. Employee disaster training, as I just said, we've been doing some joint training with Sutter County on different aspects of emergency management. We also emergency management coordination with county, state, and federal government, and we will be working on Code Red implementation with the county. Grants. For the fire department, as our budgets have been reduced over the last 7 years like everybody else, we've been really focusing on grants. Since 2001, we've been able to secure $6.5 million. That's helped us to provide 2 SAFER grants. We bought a number of equipment that we would have been tapping into the general fund, and looking at staffing issues. These are the grants that we tend to go after. Some of them, like the flood mitigation and hazard mitigation, paid for the county or the city and county's local hazard mitigation plan. The water resources flood threat emergency response grant, we upgraded Station 4 to be the city's EOC, and we'll continue to go after that. We'll be coming back to you. We just got a grant to replace all of our mobile and base station radios for about $173,000. Issues on equipment replacement. I've kind of talked a little bit about it. We've got a lot of these things we're going to try to find grants or find alternate funding to save the general fund. But there's a couple things that are coming down the road. We'll probably be coming back to you next fiscal year to purchase a second set of turnouts, the protective equipment that the firefighters wear. And there's a lot of issues that a lot of departments and national standards can look for. Having 2 sets, you're going to roll after 10 years, you get rid of 1 set, but we try to get it so there's a reserve and a primary set so that if there's cleaning, they're changing the standards for cleaning. And right now, FEMA will not fund a second set of turnouts, so we have to rely on the general fund. We have 2 engines that are in need of consideration. One is engine 1. It's a type 1 engine, the pumper. Generally what we've been doing, the practice has been 15 years as a frontline engine, 15 years in a reserve status. Engine 1 is 17 years old right now. I think we're looking about $700,000 on that. Because of the age of our fleet is too new, FEMA will not consider that. And the aerial truck, same thing with the 30-year usable life. Right now we're at 27 years. And those are things we'll come back to you budget-wise. Issues and facilities, Station 2 is really our top project. We've been working on this in phases. The bids were going to be open tomorrow. I understand they delayed it a week to give the contractors a little bit more time. You've been through the station. We have structural issues, dry rot throughout the building, ADA accessibility issues. It was built in 1978 to house 2 people. It really wasn't built to be a fire station for the most part. Our other one will be coming back to you with just some consideration, is looking to replace Station 1. It's 58 years old, has structural, electrical, roof issues, heating and air, plumbing, ADA, you name it. We've talked about a better site utilization for the whole property, removing the water tower, which would open things up. Construction of new communications monopole to serve both the city and the cell antennas from private companies. We have really impending failure of our asphalt in the back of Station 1. We have a preliminary site plan. I just provided a copy to City Manager Rock and Diana Langley to begin looking at. It's probably, because of budget costs, way off in the future. And that's our presentation. If you have any questions for Chief Williams or I'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
Can't let you guys go without a comment. Excuse my voice. First, I want to acknowledge both of you for stepping up in this time of transition in the fire department. It's not easy. I've been there, and I know that you guys are doing a good job. And in just talking with the troops that you're leading, things are going in a good direction. So I commend you for that. The final thing I would leave you with is I'm happy to see Zach here tonight. Disaster preparedness, emergency preparedness is near and dear to my heart. I know it's, I don't want to speak on behalf of the council, but I know at some of our goal-setting meetings, it's been towards the top of the list, as well as making sure that our citizens and our emergency first responders, as well as the whole city staff, are prepared should we have to face something. So I'm encouraged to see you here. Thank you for coming to our county, and we look forward to working with you, and keep up the good work, you too. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Thank you both very much. All right, Dennis, your turn. All right.